Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Atlanta, Georgia, it's time for Atlanta Business Radio, spotlighting the city's best businesses and the people who lead them.
And we are back with this very special edition of Atlanta Business Radio. It is time for ATDC Radio. We are actually down here broadcasting live from ATDC. And Lee, this is going to be a fantastic segment. Please join me in welcoming back to the Business RadioX and ATDC microphone the director of ATDC at Georgia Tech, Mr. John Avery. Good afternoon, sir.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me back.
All right, John. I think it's been about a year or so since you got going here at ATDC. You learn anything in this year plus?
It's been since November. So, yeah, I just passed my 1 year mark and gone so quickly I couldn't believe it when I saw that date coming back up on the calendar.
So now tell us like a little backstory about your background and how you envisioned your kind of the impact you'd make at ATDC and what you were kind of hoping it would become.
Well, I had been a mentor here for a few months and been around the environment for some years while I was working in the building. So I had a pretty good idea for what to expect here. And what I had imagined coming in pretty much mostly has been confirmed. I think the parts that I already knew were that this entrepreneurship gig is a hard thing. The founders have a hard time, and that's been amply confirmed. I just realized that the kind of life that it takes to bring something new into the world is really, really tough. Starting something from nothing is tricky, huh? And the hard part is the balancing act between sort of working in the business and working on the business, where the founder has the dual obligation to keep the business itself kind of moving forward in the business, but he also's got to be thinking about what the business is, sort of migrating, changing the strategy about how it's working. And so in addition to working on delivering the product, it's about making the business the kind of business that it needs to be, and that balance between those two is really tough. I like the analogy I heard this year that I really liked. It's sort of like playing poker every day, but you're all in on every hand.
That's right.
Because you have no other chips. You have to put what you've got out on the board all the time. And so you have to kind of live in that life where everything's out all the time, trying to make something happen.
So now, how tricky is it, when you're kind of evangelizing the brand of ATDC, when it's ATDC at Georgia Tech, but it's Georgia's technology incubator, where it's really for the state, while it might be here near Georgia Tech.
Actually, to me, it's been a real pleasure to be associated with an organization like ATDC that has that kind of a setup where we are funded by the state of Georgia to provide a support network for entrepreneurs all across the state. It has to be located somewhere, right? And to be located at Georgia Tech, where these amazing resources are available, it's just a big advantage. So we're at Georgia Tech, by Georgia Tech, but we're for the state of Georgia, external facing. And I think that gives us a really wonderful vantage point to provide the services that we provide to the entrepreneurs across the state.
And then have you been kind of exploring the state to make sure that the state is getting kind of the most out of the ATDC? We
have actually. Ben Andrews, I think you've had on the show several times, is our statewide coordinator. It's a new role from this year, and has been actively growing our footprints across the state. We do believe that it's hard to grow an ecosystem from scratch at any arbitrary place. Right. So rather than try to do that, we try to partner with people that are already standing things up, normally around a university in a certain part of the state. Universities are a great place to do that because they have a lot of the critical components, the meeting places, entrepreneurs, other things that you kind of need to get an ecosystem off the ground. So when ATDC can step in those environments and provide additional curriculum or content or partnerships, things like that, it's a nice combination. So we have several places now in the state.
Now, are there kind of things on your to-do list this year moving forward that you want to get accomplished?
The programs that we're trying to achieve, the scale that we're trying to achieve them has been something that we're trying to maintain. And the hardest part about that I'm trying to figure out is the value that we bring is a lot of high-touch, personal, one-on-one type coaching. And that's kind of a hard thing to scale. So a big effort this year will be more to provide some of the one-on-one kind of entry-level startup basics that would be more consumable at mass market level, sort of easier to consume on your own from an entrepreneur. And then that reserves the time from our coaches that they can spend in the one-off kind of deep coaching that's the difference between just kind of basically getting it covered and doing the right thing.
Are there resources for people that want to interact with ATDC online or through webinars or kind of virtually? That's
what we mean is we're starting to record some of our classes and put those things out there. That's early on. We're still evaluating some of the tools and methods for doing that. The dangerous part about all this is that as an entrepreneur, especially somebody who's process-driven, it's really easy to think you can just get a checkbox list and just start checking things off.
Right.
And you can perfectly build the wrong thing that the world doesn't need. And so we really want to be careful that we aren't making it easier for people to do the wrong thing.
Or faster.
Yeah. So entrepreneurship is about rapid learning. It's about quickly assessing the needs in the market. And so to have a situation where you help the entrepreneur figure out how to think about the hole in the world that his thing's going to fill rather than the thing he's going to fill it with is the hard part. And so we're intentionally trying not to make it feel like a checkbox list that you just work through, a grinder you can turn the crank.
Right, that you just do these 14 things and then your business will be successful.
Exactly, because it just doesn't work that way. And so the early part of entrepreneurship is about discovering whether the world needs what you have, and that's a different kind of activity.
And that's more human to human, and it takes those kind of conversations, the back and forth, the asking the hard questions, and me having to defend my position. That's hard to kind of make it automated.
And all of us humans want to be right. And in the entrepreneurial case, it's more important that you be, that you know the truth.
Right. The truth is more important than being right.
That's right. And that's a hard thing to get across. I think it's Dalio, the hedge fund manager, has to talk about the two biggest impediments are ego and blind spots. It's amply true for entrepreneurs as well. And so to help see through those and around those and help be more interested in the truth and being right, it's a hard process. And so it's not something you can write a bunch of check boxes around. But there are a lot of things that are one-on-one level, that are entry level, that have to be done, that startups have to do. And if
there's foundational things.
And if you can get that content in a format where it's easy to consume and it doesn't take time from a coach, that reserves the time that the coach has to spend with people on those other things that are more deeply important.
So now, has there been any moments in the first year that stand out to you that you're really proud of and that maybe surprised you?
Every day, actually, the thing that I'm most impressed with is the level that our entrepreneurs play, the level at which they play, when they get together and the kind of situations that they have to work out to get through. I'm just amazed at the quality of the decision making that they're doing and their ability to, like I said, seek that truth rather than being right, to work with their teams, to work with our coaches, to work with each other. That's what I'm just amazed at every day. And the thing that I'm trying to make sure that we protect the quality of that sort of being able to help that kind of entrepreneur become better at being successful. So
now, it's remarkable the level of success a company that has gone through the ATDC has as compared to just a random company that just takes a stab at something. Can you speak about that?
To me, I think it's a lot to do with this issue about coming at the world with a solution that's trying to find a problem and flipping that around and having this mindset that your passion is about the problem that you're trying to solve and deeply understanding that problem. And once you've done that, usually you've got 5 or 6 really good ideas that are different from the one you started with to solve that problem. It's a totally different way of thinking about what you're trying to do. And I think that when you can do that, your ability to address that hole in the world that you're trying to fill is so much more powerful because you deeply get it, you understand it, you get it even better than the people that are living with the problem that don't understand it yet. And having that approach versus having a product that you've created that you're just trying to use to change the world, but you don't know what it's for, that's a very different mindset.
But the success rate that ATDC companies have after 5 years is what, like 80, 90%?
Over 90% of the ones after they've graduated from our program are still viable. Yeah,
right,
after 5 years.
That's
a strong number.
Right, and that doesn't compare. That's tremendously higher than
on the front end though. We have currently around 600 educate level members. These are people that can just sign up on the website to come to our classes and get to know some of our staff. And come to our events or part of our network. So there's 600 of those. And then at the Accelerate level, which is our next step up from that, there's about 130-ish companies at that level.
And they got to earn their way up the ladder,
right?
It's
so
not something you just show up and you move up.
Anyone can be an Educate level member,
right?
But then one of our coaches has to adopt you to be into the Accelerate program. Mm-hmm. Those are for full-time entrepreneurs. This isn't a side gig. This is something you're working on. It's your only thing you're working on. You're going at it full tilt. And one of our coaches adopts you. That's where we assign a coach to those Accelerate level companies. So from 600 to 130,
right?
And then once you've got a team of 5 or 6 and you've got a product in market and you're trying to raise your A-level round, we have a signature program. There's about 40 of those. So it gives you a slope of the triangle between 600, 130, and 40. It's still a pretty high failure rate through that pipeline,
right?
And but the nice thing is once you figured out that's the things are working and you're getting through our process in that program and you graduate at that point, in general, we found very good success from those.
Right. So now, how have you seen maybe from this, when you're looking at ATDC now through the lens of the director, how do you see it in the world? Like, how does the world see ATDC? And maybe you see it differently than you did 10, 15 years ago when you were around the ecosystem, but you weren't leading it. How did the folks in Silicon Valley or in Boston or New York see ATDC?
The thing I think that's exciting, I guess, that I'm recognizing is that the perspective that entrepreneurs have in the South and around Georgia, they're much more pragmatic and scrappy and sort of intentional about their survival and the problems they're trying to work on. And the technology-based companies that we're able to support at ATDC are more sort of human condition-related kinds of companies, deep tech type companies that we're trying to help. They result in a lot longer-term, deeper impact societal type companies that I'm really proud to be a part of helping to support. So,
are you seeing the reputation of Atlanta firms, ATDC as a whole, kind of having more of a national kind of acceptance that, hey, these are viable players. This is where good things are happening here, as opposed to, that's a flyover city that,
Yeah, definitely. So we do take our group of our startups to the East Coast, to Boston and New York, and on the West Coast, Silicon Valley and San Francisco. And those are becoming full house events where it's kind of very well attended events. And we constantly get feedback from these are for VCs. These are trips that we take for taking our startups to meet with venture capitalists in those regions. And the feedback we always get is that the quality of the companies is really high, and they're very impressed with the way they're being set up and the way they're running, the level at which they're playing.
Right. And then I would imagine also the way that they're prepared to pitch.
That's
they're
right.
probably pretty pleased about that as well.
When you can speak the language of the customer, because you get the
because
problem,
they become the customer, right?
You're understanding the hole in the world you're trying to fill is the most important thing, and you're speaking that language. That resonates so much better than just I have a solution to some problem that I don't even understand the problem. So that resonates well. And the nice thing is that the word's, I think, getting out now that Atlanta is a place where this value exists. And so these venture capitalists that used to be only investing in local companies are now willing to take a look at broader regions. There's a lot of great venture money here in Atlanta as well. We have a strong angel network here that's related to ATDC. But it's nice to know that when you go across the whole country, the word's getting out that there's good value here.
Now, in terms of the industries that ATDC and maybe Atlanta or Georgia as a whole is kind of a sweet spot, fintech is obvious. Some of these kind of software automation, marketing automation kind of companies, a lot of them have clustered here. Mm-hmm. What are some of the other industries that kind of we're being known for?
We've had a growing momentum in our retail tech vertical at ATDC over the past 2 years. That's a sort of anything that has to do with interacting with a customer in a sort of a retail environment. Mm-hmm. Advanced manufacturing is a big area. Logistics is big in Georgia. There's a growing ag tech thing happening in Georgia.
Healthcare.
Health tech is one of our largest verticals at the moment. High activity at that level. Automotive, there's a big automotive base growing in Georgia. So right now, the 4 verticals you mentioned, health tech, fintech, retail tech, and advanced manufacturing, are the ways where we have dedicated staff supporting those at ATDC. But we're always interested in accommodating those other verticals in Georgia as they grow.
And especially now, technology is in every industry. So
pretty much. One of the models that's being considered is today we think about it in verticals, but actually having centers of excellence around certain technologies like AI or crypto or cybersecurity or things that all companies are having to do well. Having centers of excellence around those categories at ATDC is something that we're evaluating as well.
Now, are you seeing, it seems like the city is just growing leaps and bounds every day. More and more people are moving here. Do you see, are you getting the talent, young talent coming here and moving and relocating, either a small firm or themselves as an individual to take advantage of all the resources?
We do. At ATDC itself, our work basically starts when the entrepreneur shows up at our door. So we haven't been primarily involved in the recruiting of companies into Atlanta.
Right.
But for example, Engage across the hall here is an accelerator that's funded by a lot of the big companies in Georgia. And they have a worldwide reach. So they bring companies into their cohort from all over the world. And it's happened more than once now that a company in that cohort comes here and finds out the value of Atlanta, and they end up moving their company here and staying in this ecosystem because of all that it brings.
Now, so what's been your favorite part of this adventure?
There's nothing like when you see a person which has so much talent, applying it to solve a real problem in the world that they have a passion for, and you can bring resources alongside them to help them be successful, and then see the benefit of that support reflected back in the way it's moved them forward in ways they couldn't have moved forward before. I've never been associated with anything that has that direct feedback where you see that evidence of what you do every day, played out in the lives of the people that you're trying to help. So it's been hugely rewarding for me.
Now, what advice would you give a company to start at the bottom to take advantage of the Educate program? Because to me, that's, the beginning of the funnel. So that's a place where a lot of people could really take advantage of resources that are very generous and very affordable for pretty much anybody who has an idea.
Yeah, it's basically $25 a quarter. It's quite affordable.
Right. But to have 600 is great. But to me, that should be, 100 times that amount. I would
say any entrepreneur who is interested in growing a company in Georgia, this is essentially a state of Georgia's economic development service.
It's a gift that they're giving every entrepreneur.
And the idea of taking the product approach that most entrepreneurs start with and flip it over to speak about it in terms of the hole in the world that you're trying to fill can dramatically
just the mindset shift.
That shift is so important to get done early so that you don't waste a lot of resources. And our intro class is called Customer Discovery, and basically you come in and you learn about the theory and the tools, and then you go do the work. You can't do customer discovery in the classroom. You have to be in the world.
Right. And on whiteboard. That's not going to happen on the whiteboard. It's going to happen when you pick up the phone or
you can learn how to do it in the room. And then so we do that on Tuesdays, and then on Thursdays there's a lab where you come back and you speak with the class and with the mentors and the teacher about what you've been learning, and you get feedback in real time about that process. And
so that's like an accountability tool that's holding you accountable. You've learned this. Now go out and make some calls and talk to somebody and get some real data.
That's right.
And then come back here and share the learning and explain how you've done.
And as we said earlier, this ego and blind spot, we want the customer to say what we want them to say.
Right.
And we will hear what we want to hear. But when you're coming into a room and you can sort of share what you actually asked and what you actually heard, that environment helps you get a better idea for what you actually heard, what you actually learned, and how you can change what you're going to do the next time to get even more knowledge. And again, this is the discipline that helps an entrepreneur all the way through their career. It doesn't matter. It's something that every company should be doing all the time. When you hear it all the time. Customer discovery is everywhere you look. But it's something that no one of us does naturally very well because, like I said, we want to see the world the way we want it to be, not the way it is. And to get an idea for what the world looks like from the customer's perspective and then understand that deeply, you can immediately see the value of how you can bring better answers to that need.
So now for you, is it more rewarding to see somebody at that beginning stage have the light bulb go off and then get on the right track then? Or is it after they've graduated and they've left ATDC to now go venture on their own? Which to you it brings you more joy?
I guess we're more directly connected to those on the early phase. Mm-hmm. And I get really excited when I see an entrepreneur where the light goes on and they say, oh, that thing I thought that I was going to use to save the world, it's not all that important. But what I learned by trying to see if there was a need for it, there was something else I discovered that's actually what I was actually after, but I just didn't even know it.
Right.
That I can definitely do something about. And they light up on that. That passion sort of reaches a whole nother level because they deeply get the pain that their customers were in that they didn't even really understand before.
Until they really dug deeper.
Until they asked them and understood what they heard. Mm-hmm. And that completely changes the way you think about everything you're doing in your company, and it changes how all the dynamics work around your company.
And you have to get that right. If you don't,
you'll never reach scale if you don't get that right.
Right. And that's something that a lot of people, they think they got it before they know if there's something to get, right?
Yeah. There's also something that's exciting to me about the process. When entrepreneurs start, the company and the person are the same thing. Mm-hmm. So basically you are, they're one, right? And the process of entrepreneurship is to make the company become separate from the founder. And eventually it's like a child in the world that's different from the parent, and it goes and does its own thing. And to see that process unfold in real time, where you start it with it's the same, it's a person, it's an idea, and they're all the same. And then that company begins to grow. They hire more people. It has its own culture. It has its own mission. The entrepreneur becomes just a part of the company. Right. Eventually the company gets to be an independent thing that the entrepreneur is an employee of. And then that thing begins to scale. There's something magic about that. That's, I hadn't appreciated the complexity of that whole process. That's why it's so difficult too, because in a way it's like, having a child, and all that goes along with that.
Except there's 600 of them being born here that turn into 40.
Exactly. So I really, to see that play out in first person, it's just rewarding. I think that, there's a lot of books you can read about entrepreneurship. You can learn all the one-on-one basics about how to do this thing, but there's nothing like the actual process of being in the trenches doing the work with other people that are also in the trenches doing the work that you can't duplicate in a classroom or in a book. Those things are important to learn, and those skills are important to gain, but there's no substitute for being in a group of people that are doing that work with you, that feel the same pain you feel, that you can commiserate with and get feedback from.
And you have access to. I mean, that's the beauty of this ecosystem. You can go down the hall, and like you said, somebody else has a similar problem, might be in a totally different industry, but it's a similar problem, and they'll kind of listen to you and say, you know what, have you tried this? Because I've tried this. Mm-hmm. And there's mentors everywhere at your disposal. It's just the resources is just unmatched.
I agree.
So now, how do you address the culture? Like you mentioned that sometimes culture is one of those things, it's going to happen whether you plan for it or not. But I know you spend a lot of time on customer discovery, but how much kind of energy is placed on kind of a culture that is scalable?
It's maybe, I'd say, the most difficult thing to get right, and the most important thing, if you can get it right, that'll impact your company. At the end of the day, the only competitive advantage that any other company has is the culture that attracts and keeps the best people. Your people are the best advantage you have. Mm-hmm. And you have to create a culture that attracts and keeps those. And to create that from the beginning it's difficult. So we do have a growing list of curriculum things that are related to culture. But in the end, it's funny that most people, none of us really get culture until you've been stung by it, until you've seen it not work well. And suddenly you get it. Oh, I got to make this right. Mm-hmm. And so we try at the ATDC staff level to be the kind of people, sort of the culture that we want to
kind of model the behavior
as a sort of an example. But it's difficult to get that right. Every single company here, I can tell you, that's growing struggles with culture, struggles with interpersonal conflict, struggles with issues related to dealing with personalities. We're all human. We're all fallen. We're all sort of struggling. And so anytime you're trying to do something with more than one person, you're going to have a conflict. And so I do think in the coming year, I think having more sort of explicit discussions about how to manage culture and how to achieve the goals of a good culture are going to become even more important.
Now, we talked a lot about the people that are part of ATDC in terms of whether they're kind of students and educating themselves, or they're growing, or they're scaling. How do you kind of help the enterprises that want to be affiliated with ATDC, the sponsors? They're an important component of this as well.
Yeah, they are. Every company as it grows, of course, needs services that it can achieve outside. So you don't want to create everything in-house. And so we do have a wide range of legal and accounting and real estate and, those kinds of companies that help out our startups. They're the ones that we have that are sponsors here are, they come into office hours so the entrepreneurs can meet them, ask them questions, get feedback. The sponsors know that there's not a lot of depth of resources available at this point in the startup's life. But
they're investing in the long term.
This is about the relationship building.
Right.
And they prefer to have companies that are well positioned later when they grow, that are in good position so that when they work with them as a client, they know what they're doing.
Right.
It's a lot better than when they're a mess. And so having them be involved early here helps them get up on the right foot that way. And
that's something that ATDC looks for sponsorship throughout the year, right?
Anytime, yeah. Companies that are interested to come here, we do have programs. We have different levels of sponsorship depending on what role the sponsor wants to play. From just doing office hours to come and teaching classes or having some different levels of involvement.
And there's also a need for ATDC to get those kind of entrepreneurs that want to give back, that have maybe got a certain level of success, that want to come and kind of help the next group up, right?
So as we said, there's no substitute for being in the trenches. So our coaches, we try to find coaches that have firsthand startup experience, specifically with our entrepreneurs in residence. These are the coaches for the signature companies. We want to find people who have been with a startup from the beginning through the raise and through the exit. And they're in between now, and they're looking for sort of what's coming next. They can come here and give 20 hours a week coaching companies in our program. And that, when you're talking to somebody who's just been through the process you're about to go through in first person, there's nothing like that kind of coaching.
Right.
So,
it's like you said, it's not in a book. It's not a hypothetical.
Right.
This is, I have the scar tissue today.
Yep.
It just happened.
This is what I wish I had done differently. This is what I learned in this the hard way. Because nobody's really been through this loop many times. Some people have been through it more than once, but not very many. And so it's nice to know that you can be with someone who's been through it at least once, and then there's other people who have been through it once, but in a different situation. Mm-hmm. So all of us, as talented as we may be, there's only one life thread that we've lived, right? So there's only one experience we've had, and it doesn't always apply to the situation that the person's that you're trying to help is going through. But when you've got a bunch of people who've all lived a different strand,
right, and
you can relate and connect and be networked with those people, then you can usually find someone who's got a similar enough strand that you can actually use the information in a constructive way.
So now if somebody wanted to plug into the ATDC ecosystem, whether as a sponsor, whether as a coach, whether as a startup looking to grow, what are the coordinates?
Well, easily you can reach out to me directly. It's John Avery at ATDC.org. And then
the website is ATDC.org.
That's right. And we do have Adam is in charge of our sponsorship program. Mm-hmm. So that would be the first person I would connect with on that level. And then depending on what the nature of the relationship is, as a mentor or as a coach, or at what level you'd like to get involved, there's places that we can plug you in.
And then you're always looking for more, right? You want to serve more of Georgia. You want to get the people kind of in the outskirts to get involved and take advantage of this great resource.
One of the most difficult things about being the director here is that these coaches that we have are highly sought after. Mm-hmm. And when they're coming here to work for us to do this coaching, they inevitably find an amazing situation to deal for them to get involved with, either at a startup or at another big company. And so there's quite a bit of turnover in that coaching staff. So we're always looking to have that hot network of people that are sort of in this field and that can step in for some time to help do that coaching.
Good stuff, John. Thank you so much. Here at Business RadioX, we're proud to be helping you tell the stories that are coming out of ATDC. And every time we're here, we're learning more and more about the great resources that are available. And we're proud to evangelize and help you get the word out.
Thank you very much.
All right. This is Lee Cantor for Stone Payton. We will see you all next time on ATDC Radio.